Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, September 14th at 3 p.m. This is the City of Topeka's City Council Public Health and Safety Committee. I'm Karen Hiller from District 1, and I chair it. Introductions of committee members.
Neil Dobler, District 7.
Sylvia Ortiz, District 3.
Thank you. We have a short agenda, but with all sorts of perhaps very rich stuff included. We need to approve our minutes from August 17th. We're going to have a quick update on what's happening with homeless populations and our utility program. The primary focus today would be to talk at Councilman Dobler's encouragement about internet reliability for Topekans all over. Then we will touch on public hearings regarding property maintenance. Working on that code has been a year-long mission of this group, but we've sort of halted because of COVID in terms of doing public engagement. So, does anyone have any other items for the agenda today? If not, we will head back to the top. With the meeting called to order, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from August 17th.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of August 17. Any discussion, additions, corrections? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Update from staff regarding homelessness. Self-introduce and give us a quick report.
Hi, Sergeant Josh Clam, Topeka Police Department. So not a whole lot as far as change as far as our unsheltered population. As far as citywide, especially since 10 cities have been demolished, we're probably somewhere in the range of 100 individuals that are unsheltered, give or take. I know that Mark DeGraff with the Topeka Rescue Mission has been helping out with the census and trying to get as close to accurate numbers as possible. And I think he is estimating somewhere around 130. So we're somewhere between 100 and 130 unsheltered in Topeka. It's pretty difficult just because of how transient they are, things of that nature. It does appear that, and I say appear, it does seem like we have more unsheltered population than probably last year. At least I've heard a lot more. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think we had more last year. I mean, when we were having this meeting last year, we had 150 some people in 10 city alone. So I do think our numbers are down. However, and I'm assuming this is a lot of assumption here, but due to COVID, I think more people are probably panhandling and things of that nature. And so we're getting more reports. I'm getting more reports of unsheltered individuals. I don't know how accurate those reports are as far as if they actually are, but I do think some of that's because of COVID. As far as our actual unsheltered people that we know, COVID has kind of set us back a little bit. For them especially, there's a lot of services that they don't have access to that they used to. So like, for example, the rescue mission is still doing as much as they possibly can for our homeless and unsheltered individuals. And I definitely don't want to speak for them. Barry can come and present for them, but I know like in August, they handed out, oh man, now I'm blanking. I think it was close to 100 sack lunches. Things of that, because what they're not doing is they're not letting the unsheltered population come in and use their cafeteria and have a meal like they were the year before. They also can't go in and take showers, do laundry, any of that stuff that they used to be allowed to do, they can't anymore due to COVID restrictions. It has gotten better since we're working through this pandemic, but I can tell you that food became a pretty big issue for some of these folks. Like I know several individuals who live down along the river. Their entire meal for the day consisted of whatever that sack lunch was from the rescue mission. Because other agencies that normally were handing out food, their either hours got reduced or they didn't know, the unsheltered individual didn't know when they could go get food, things like that. So some of these guys were living off of 5 to 800 calories, 1,000 calories a day. I do think that's gotten a little bit better, but that was an issue there for a while. Water is also a pretty big issue now, especially during the summer months. It's cooling down now, but still, that's an issue. I can tell you that TPD received a really awesome donation from some local churches as far as water goes, so that has gotten better, but that's still a struggle throughout the city. So those are some of the things that they've been working on. The ID program. Again, because of COVID, that's been on and off. We did suspend the city ID program twice during the pandemic. The reason being is because a large portion of my workforce, as far as the ID program goes, is specifically volunteers. It's VIPs. And they're the ones who greet the individuals when they come in. They take the applications, they take the photographs. And because they were in a more endangered age group, we suspended the program again twice during the pandemic. It's up and running now. We started again, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. But the city ID is back up and running. And again, that's every Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. And then state IDs has been very slow, converting those city IDs to state IDs. Again, working with the state with COVID, restricting number of individuals we can take in at any given time. I think we've done maybe around 30 to 50 state IDs this year, which is quite a bit lower than we were at last year. And a lot of that's, again, due to the pandemic. But again, everything's up and running again. And so we are moving. It's just a little bit slower this year. So there has been a lot of press, if you will, like on Facebook, reference some of our unsheltered individuals, Long Wanamaker and things like that. I can tell you that all of those individuals have been contacted. Myself, the rescue mission, Vallejo, are working with all of those individuals. It's just not a quick process by any means. So, but I do know that's been getting a lot of press. But like I said, they've all been contacted multiple times, outreach multiple times. We're doing a lot, at least everything we can to help them. So that's about it. I'll stand for questions if you guys have any.
Thank you. You've got a question here?
No, I just want to commend you for continuing to fight for the homeless in this tough time with COVID and everything.
So thank you.
Even with the IDs, because that is something that they continuously need regardless of what we're going through or whatever. I guess I would like to know if we thought about reaching out to churches or anything that
Yes, thank you.
could provide some type of meal or something to them, because I didn't know if Let's Help was still closed down due to this, or
I don't believe anymore. I think they're back up and running as well. I don't know if they're on restricted hours or not. But actually, that's a good idea as far as the food. We've been reaching out to churches in other fashions, which remind me, like showers and things of that nature. So one thing I will share, and this is more the rescue mission and Vallejo working together. They put in for a grant to purchase a mobile shower bathroom unit. And I'll get you guys the specs, or I'll have Mark DeGraff send you the specs, but it's a shower that can be pulled by a truck. They've partnered up with multiple churches. I think there's 3 or 5 on board where they'll be able to park this trailer in their parking lot. The trailer itself has multiple 1,000-gallon tank or something along those lines. And so what it is I believe there's 2 bays. And so individuals will be able to bathroom, shower, inside the trailer. It's locked, so it's secure, they're safe. And then there's also at least 1 washer and dryer on board. It's all enclosed. And so they'll be able to do laundry and then clean their person all at the same time.
Wow.
And so that's been, I believe it's been ordered. It's at least in the works. And so Topeka will be getting at least one of those trailers here in the very near future, specifically to help our unsheltered. And they partnered up with churches to travel around the city and hopefully leave them, I think, in a week at a time in different churches. And then we'll just have to find places to dump the black water tanks and things like that, which I think right now they're looking at the Expo Center. They have a spot that you can dump tanks there. So yeah, just another partnership with community to help all of our unsheltered individuals.
So if I may, you said we applied for the grant. Do we know how soon we'll get that, or will we hear from it, or is it?
I don't. I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I can reach out to Mark when I sit down via text and try to get some of that information for you. But I know it's in the works. I want to say it's come from Arkansas, at least they're going to build it. So I think within the next 3 to 6 months, something along those lines. Because I think it's even designed to work in the wintertime, so we don't have to worry about it freezing or anything. So, but again, I was a part of some conversations, but I was involved in the meat and potatoes of it, so I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
I remember seeing those on Facebook, probably on Facebook, or some of these we as council members are on a number of listservs that shoot us ideas that cities are using and so on. So that's exciting to hear that it's coming here. Question?
Yeah, Tent City, I'm assuming is a railroad right away, the folks that were on the railroad right away, or is that
Well,
different?
yes and no.
Okay,
So back in the area that was known as Tent City, there were 5 different property owners. There was the city, the rescue mission, the railroad, BNSF Railroad, Union Pacific Railroad. Maybe there's just 4. Anyway, so everybody that was on railroad property, that has all been completely demolished. There's no camps on railroad property. Still in that same area, there was a small sliver of city-owned property, and there are still 3 to 5 camps along that city-owned slot. Most of those guys who chose to stay unsheltered, who refused housing, because at that time we were able to get through KDADS a housing grant, and we were able to house almost everybody. I would say 95, 98% of them for 6 months. We were able to house them. The individuals who chose not to participate in that program remained out there. There's 3 to 5 on the north side of the levee, and then there's maybe 5 to 7 camps on the south side of the levee right next to the river. So there's still a few out there, but they're all on city property.
okay, thank you.
You mentioned Housing First, and that was on our list of things to check on. Those were 6-month arrangements,
Yes.
right? So could one of you talk about where we are with those and what their prospects
I
are,
know
how
a little.
they're
Do you
doing?
have more? I'll let Carrie do it, or excuse me, Corey do it. I will share that some of those 6 months are coming up. Some of them aren't because they were staggered. So, so
But still, we're talking Christmas for those.
yep,
right?
correct. So I know those conversations are occurring, especially within the KDADS community. So, anything else for me? Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And just as you're sitting down, it's just so helpful. I've been on at least one of those strings with a certain gentleman that all these people who are seeing him are writing to us and
Yeah.
commenting, and it's just really, it's nice to be able to simply verify rather than surprise you always, and know that y'all are out there and that we can with assurance say that people are checking on them and working with them.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So we had 25...
Self-introduced too.
Oh, sorry.
Even though we all know you.
I know. Corey Wright, City of Topeka Housing Services. So we had 25 households that were housed with the Housing First for 6 months. We recently had a monthly meeting and determined whether or not they were going to be able to sustain that housing, because several of them, the end of their 6 months is the end of this month, actually. So we had a meeting. Of the 25, we have five households that the case manager says will have no problem continuing to pay rent on their own, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 5. So they have income sufficient to sustain the rent after the assistance ends. So that's exciting. We have 9 that are possibility. So they're still really working hard with them, but it's a good possibility is where we left it. We'll reassess that again next month. A couple of them we've extended with more assistance from KDADS. We've extended their voucher for an extra 2 months because we think that will make a difference in sustaining some income and getting them situated. And then we have 11 that just are not working with Vallejo, and Vallejo is doing all the work on this, not the city. I mean, they're amazing. So all the successes are really related to Vallejo. But 11 will likely be homeless again. They have not engaged in any services and won't return phone calls, this or that. So that's disheartening, but 14 out of 25, so that's 56%, are looking good. And that's amazing for the population that we're looking at. So I'm pleased. Yeah.
Good work.
Any questions?
Do you have anything from the task force? Is that from the task force? Do you have anything else to add from the homeless task force?
Nope. I think the homeless task force right now really is ramping up on our homeless management information systems. As you are aware, the city received a grant to get that system in better shape and get some quality reports. The rescue mission has not participated in that in the years prior. They are now going to participate within the next 2 or 3 weeks. They will be entering into HMIS, which is amazing. The nice thing about that too, that we're not even thinking about, is when we do the point in time count, we won't have to count those people at the mission because we can run a report and there they are. So that'll save staff a lot of time, and we can really focus our efforts on the unsheltered. We never capture 100, and I know they're out there. I believe Sergeant Clam, so that's where we can put our focus this year. So that's kind of what we're working on, a lot of HMIS activities, and then as you're aware, the Impact Avenues had a pretty successful year. So
Why don't you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't bring numbers with me. I apologize, but I believe it was around 99 households and 100 or so kids that were housed. We had a very high success rate of keeping them housed, which is in the 90s. Which is amazing with COVID, because almost all of our families were affected by COVID, as you can imagine. So keeping them housed during this time is pretty substantial. So one of the things that the Navigator is working on right now is really making sure that the kids are connected so they can get their hotspots and their studies. Oh, numbers, thank you. Numbers are good. But glasses are good too.
Yeah.
Busted you out.
Okay.
You run over there and read it for her.
I thought I'd seen it too. That email, was that what you gave her?
Yeah. Number of students, 168, so I was off. Yeah, thank you. And households is 72. So 72 households, 168 kids. So that's quite a few. We're pleased. We think that with COVID happened, we started in mid-October, and COVID happened in March, and to have those numbers, we're pretty pleased with the program. We think this year we'll start to get more referrals. We have opened up the referral process to not just come from the school district, because there's a lot of people working with families that can make the referral. We can know if they're McKinney-Vento, refer it back to the school so they're informed that we have a McKinney-Vento family, and then we can assist them that way. So it's pretty good stuff.
Big shout out to Cody Foster and his team.
Yes.
And that's a 3-year program, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that, in terms of your numbers of homeless that are actually unhoused, if we add in 72 Impact Avenues families and our 25, that's another 100, right? Mm-hmm. So we may net have more, or else they're simply coming out of the proverbial woodwork, at least not couch surfing with families. And I mean, people get tucked away all over the place that are in need. That's really great. Questions? More questions on that?
No, I'd just like to say thank you, Corey, and all that the city has done on that. I was reading the email today, and I was going to ask you about that because I hadn't heard about it in a while and wondering where it was going. And it's a great program. I could testify. I seen a man and his 2 daughters were walking one time, and he just asked me if I would just buy the kids something to eat. And I bought the whole family something to eat and gave it to him. Then I seen him again, and he said he got involved with you guys.
Good.
And he was so happy, and he was just talking about how great Topeka was, and to help him and his girls. So
That's great.
It's working.
Yeah, I encourage anybody to refer a family to us if they have a family that is in a homeless situation. And homeless, for this definition, includes couch surfing. So yes, please come to us and
Couch
let's see if we
surfing,
can help.
that'd be me.
No, not just fall asleep on the couch.
Okay, not couch potato, couch. Thank you again.
Corey, we also have a report on utility assistance on this agenda. Is that you?
Yes.
Also? Okay.
Well, me and Paula Dell from the Water Department.
All right.
So I'll start with our August 25th day. We had 5 staff in this room separated out, and we had appointments all day long throughout the day. We had several no-shows in the morning. However, the afternoon was very busy, but not too busy where we're not following space guidelines. So we served that day 68 households. So 68 households, that includes 105 adults, 70 children, and 3 seniors. We spent a total of $23,934 that day. And these were assistance for people who had an active disconnect notice. So we could pay on that day up to 6 months worth of arrears, but they had to have active, it had to be in disconnect status for us to assist. So pretty successful day, was a long day, but it was a good day. Obviously, 68 households is quite a few. So, and then I don't know if Paula wants to talk about what's happening now with the water assistance, if you would.
If we could double check, because I ended up following up on one of those cases from the outside back in. And now one of the things to keep people from getting their utilities shut off, they were supposed to go in and certify with the water department that their delinquency was COVID related. And then they were supposed to be on a plan of some sort. And you mentioned, I remember when we passed the program and I'd been worried about needing a shut off because we didn't want people to just not pay anything, so they got a shut off notice so that they could get this money. Wasn't there a twist in that eligibility so that if they had certified as COVID related and they were on a payment plan, that they could check with the utility department and get that assistance without the shut-off notice?
No, they had to have a shut-off. That's a HUD requirement. They had to have a disconnect notice.
Okay.
When they scheduled to make the appointment, we did check with water that same day, once we made the appointment, to
Okay.
make sure that they had an active shut-off.
That they
So
were-
some people had to wait maybe a couple extra days to get the official cutoff, knowing that they can't pay that bill, and that's how we handled that situation. We had several that we worked around. We had one where we were getting ready to pay, but their next shut-off for the new bill amount was coming up in a couple days, and we were able to just hold off, pay it after the second, so we were able to help with more than just 1 month.
That's the
So
kind of thing I'd been worried about.
the water department and I have been really working together extremely well. Paula and her team are amazing, so it's a good partnership. So I'll let Paula talk about the rest.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Paula Dell. I'm the manager of the customer service area and utilities. And thank you, Corey. I feel that her and her team are amazing. We have been partnering. We helped with getting those disconnect notices and copies of our account histories for all the people that had appointments. And of course, some of them didn't show up. And what we were doing as soon as the appointment was made, we were going into our system and what we call extending them out until about a week after those appointments, so they would not get shut off if they had an appointment, that they made today, and then next week their cycle came up. We did not shut them off. We kept them going and knew that, we had some funding that was possibly coming. So we were really pleased to be able to help that many customers. And we're trying to work now, still with Corey's team, but trying to help get customers to come right down here to City Express. And we've got some Wednesday afternoons set aside that I'll come down and work with my staff here. And it's a small team, so we're, kind of taking a few customers at a time so we don't have space issues and, making sure we can social distance. And doing the same thing, making sure they bring their income, proof of income, their lease, make sure that they kind of know the guidelines before they come out to us. They must live within the city limits also, so that does impact some of our customers, especially out in Montera. But we do hope to be able to continue that program and have then Corey look through all the documentation and the paperwork, and her team can sign off and hopefully approve those customers for, the similar up to 6 months worth of bills.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was surprised at the low number with the elderly. What are we doing to reach the elderly?
So right now, what we are doing, and probably even before, if we had customers calling in that were having a hard time, or we were shutting customers off and then they were calling, we were going through our customer service reps over at the water plant as well as here at City Express. we're referring customers to the program, so giving them the flyer so they could see if they may qualify. So a lot of customers that we've spoken to, many of them probably are elderly, and they certainly can qualify for the program. We'd be happy to help them.
Have we thought about JAAA? Are we contacting some of the agencies that have that help the elderly to let them know that this is going on? I was just surprised that was a really low number. I just want to make sure, and I know I'm not taking anything away from what you guys do. Sure. I think it's great. I just want to make sure that we are thinking about all of the agencies, as well as the state agencies, that they know that that's available.
It's supposed to be COVID related though, right? And so
Yes.
most of the seniors that aren't working, they're on a fixed income that didn't change. So they wouldn't be eligible unless it was something COVID related that caused the delinquency, correct?
Right. They would need to sign a statement saying that there was impact of COVID in some manner.
I mean, if they were, I had one, it was
guess that
not
would
at
be-
that level, but if you were driving Uber on the side or something and all that business dried up or whatever, if somebody had some side income that they lost otherwise, somebody on a fixed income at any age shouldn't be in arrears because nothing changed, right?
Theoretically correct, yes.
What if somebody came in and they were only 2 months in arrears right now, and the program allows for 6?
We would only be able to help them with their amounts that are past due.
Of course, but I mean,
So we wouldn't be able to then do 6 months for them if they only had 2 months past due. So we would print the bill that could contain a disconnect notice on probably not their most recent bill, but the prior bill, and that would qualify for the assistance.
I guess what I'm thinking is it's almost like roulette. If I'm already 6 months behind because I quit paying in
Right.
March, then I get lots of money. But if I come in at 2 months behind because I did pay for a while, but it's at Christmas time I may still not be back at work full time or whatever, and might still be struggling. Is there a chance to come in and Corey's nodding? She's ready to come
I'll let
up here.
Corey take that one.
Okay, so normally the city social service agencies adopts kind of an informal policy that you get rent and utility assistance one time a year.
Right.
That's that's our normal situation. That has really lapsed with COVID and is not really happening. I don't think every agency they have their own rules, but that's just kind of our informal rule that we go by. So with ESG funds, we are allowed to go in more than once a year. So we plan on if these people want to come back in another month and they still don't have a job, then we can assist them with another month for a total of 6 months. So they have the ability to do that.
Super, and that will relieve them needing that money from somebody else too, which
Yes.
stretches. Thank you.
You bet.
Good.
But if I may, the gas company had wrote one of my constituents and said, you're not eligible until after November, blah, blah, blah. So they did apply for LEAP and they got that, and then they applied through the gas company and then they got more, and then they did write them that letter and say, you're not eligible. So I think they can only do it so many times, or maybe they're trying to help a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what that process is. Yeah.
Well, if it brought them current, maybe they couldn't get help until they were.
Yeah, I really, and I know it's not your guys' guideline, but I hate when we have to let them go on disconnect charge. I
too.
just hate that. Why can't we help them before they get there? It seems like we
know.
would be able to help more people, and it wouldn't be so
Well,
high at that time.
Corey was explaining, and is it Pam? Paula, how they kind of worked around that. So, got a puncher ticket with HUD.
Yeah.
We followed the rules.
They need a
the
disconnect
T.
notice. They have a disconnect notice. Okay.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thanks.
Others?
No
Could I just
question.
add one more thing on
Okay.
the disconnect notice? So if you are past due and you receive your bill and it has a disconnect notice, that doesn't necessarily mean you're being disconnected today. That means there's a date at which you must pay that or you absolutely will be disconnected. So, as Corey mentioned, we're making sure that we're working with customers, and customers who were already disconnected at the time they made those appointments. We worked with them to try to at least get the delinquent fee paid and get them back on pending the appointment. So we did try to work with the people who were already disconnected, because, we certainly feel for those folks.
Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. You do a great job. Thanks, Corey. City Manager.
Thank you, Councilwoman. One thing I do want to make a comment about is that as part of the money that we received through the Sparks program or the CARES Act, we have some additional monies that eventually we will be making available to help with utilities. And it may include all utilities, and it also will include some assistance with rental expense. And we're still developing the policy as it relates to that, but we will stay tuned, I guess is what I'm saying. We have some potential help, additional help that we will be making available. The money that Corey and Paula were using is the money we got through the ESG part of the CARES Act, which we got almost right away. This is additional money that through the county that they're giving to us. Part of our application included some assistance to them for some additional items. We've got to finish developing the program, what's covered, how you become eligible, et cetera. So there's a little more work yet for us to do before we can announce it, but there is a program that's coming, and so that will also provide some additional assistance to residents.
That's awesome.
Thank you. All right. Anything else on homeless circumstances, utilities? Let's move on then. We've had guests who hopefully found this very informative and good use of their half hour. Let's get started on internet reliability for Topeka residents. We did not talk about this in advance, but this was your thought. Do you want to lead some discussion?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'll kick this off just with a little bit of a preface. I think, we're all facing uncertain times, and particularly those with kids in school, whether they're attempting to go face-to-face or hybrid or totally online. Just really plays up the fact that if you don't have reliable, high-speed internet service, it makes it very difficult to have kids at home trying to learn. So I think we had a little bit of a discussion last time about the fact that under some previous initiatives, well prior to COVID, there was discussion about internet service and how to extend that to parts of the city and county that are perhaps underserved. So I think we've asked Gina Millsap, who headed up, as I recall, that effort, to give us just a few minutes of background on where we were with that and perhaps why it hasn't moved forward. And then it looks like we have folks from AT&T and Cox to talk about programs that they have. So I think we'll have a few questions about.
Scott's from 501.
Right, I hadn't gotten there yet,
Okay.
but I will. Perhaps we'll have some questions about what that really means. And then, yes, representative from 501, we appreciate that. You're the boots on the ground that can probably tell us a lot more about problems that the community's facing, at least the 501 community. And then maybe we wrap that up with a little bit of discussion about what the city can do and efforts in other communities that we've seen that we might be able to replicate perhaps here in Topeka. So, Madam Chairwoman, if we could start maybe with Gina Millsap and just background on the effort prior to COVID.
If I can throw two dimensions into that before Gina starts, because it may, and Scott may, anybody may want to add. I also chair the Social Services Grant Committee, and we had a special meeting on senior services on Friday.
That's right.
And it turned out that in that discussion, that lack of broadband service is huge for both the centers, the nursing homes, and those seniors who are home alone, either because they're nervous about going out or because their senior center or other services are shut down. and both the access to broadband for those seniors in their homes, as well as the bandwidth to take care of a nursing home or that has multiple people who need to be using it at the same time. Same thing with a senior center that's either on its own or sharing a facility with somebody else who's using a lot more bandwidth than they used to. And so that has come up, and since you suggested that we talk about this, and I also asked Sergeant Clam if there's any issues, because our homeless people need to be connected as well, just to, if you have anything to share on that, and then we can go into this discussion. And I'm watching them nod on the line, so maybe that will enhance our conversation as well.
Sure. I mean, one thing I'll add, a lot of individuals think that just because individuals are homeless or unsheltered, they don't have phones or they don't have access to the internet, and that's just not true. I mean, if the library's open, there's access there. But honestly, almost everybody, regardless of their housing stature, has a phone. And so as long as they can charge it, they usually have access to the internet. Now, they might have to find a hotspot. They probably don't have service, or they're paying minute by minute type of deal. But individuals are using their phones, trying to look for jobs, trying to find different resources that are open. Like if they're trying to Google where can I get food, things of that nature. If they're not from around here, that all is occurring. And so yeah, the more internet access they have, it does make a big difference, not only in job searching, but just for the normal food, water. Is the rescue mission open? Are they taking people? Is Let's Help open? All that good stuff. So absolutely. I mean, it's all encompassing.
Thank you so much. It's interesting. So oddly, as we're seeing in COVID, they're surviving better than maybe the kids and the seniors are.
They are social distancing.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Gina, appreciate you being here and look forward to hearing from you.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much. First of all, I will apologize for my appearance. I'm wearing 2 pairs of glasses because I usually don't wear glasses and I can't see anything. So I look like a demented librarian, I'm afraid. Don't let that fool you.
I kind of like it. I kind of like it.
That's close to Halloween. So
I think that, as clearly the pandemic has intensified what it means to be unconnected. Right, and we're not the only. Every community in the country is experiencing the same thing. It really shone, I think, a spotlight on areas where we need to work. And I think in some ways our broadband planning process was maybe a little bit ahead of its time. We certainly anticipated a situation like this, but what we had hoped would happen is that a community-based plan would come out of the process, and that we would identify the gaps, identify the disparities, because, as I say, actually, this isn't a technology issue as much as it is a social equity issue. And those inequities go to not just the broadband itself, but to the appropriate devices. I can assure you, every day we're helping people that come in to use a computer because it's really, really hard to apply for a job on your phone. And sometimes it's almost impossible. And then there's that whole aspect of digital literacy, which certainly Scott can talk to as well. Just because people have the technology does not mean that they know how to use it effectively. So there's all those aspects. So I think the takeaways, we learned a lot by working with Tilson Technologies, by talking to people in the community. It's very clear that we need a community-based plan. That's what I would say. That really looks at Topeka and Shawnee County together. That brings all of our school districts together. And we've had numerous conversations with the school districts over the years, and they've been very collaborative and very supportive. They're ready, right, Scott? They're ready to go. I think when Scott moved into the community, I think I got a call from him, an email from him, probably the first month he was here saying, "I've worked on broadband before, can I help?" Which was wonderful. So I think now clearly the elements that we need to focus on are, we need a comprehensive plan that's strategic. We need a public-private partnerships with our providers who are already, here in the community providing services, and then really looking at those gaps. A lot of the things we're doing now, we sent the bookmobiles out as hotspots, and we'll do that again if we need to. We've actually have much more robust Wi-Fi available now that can be deployed in a much wider area on the bookmobiles. We're doing the same upgrades for our building, but quite honestly, that's all stopgap measures. It kind of breaks my heart when I see kids sitting in a parking lot trying to do their homework. Or somebody sitting, outside a bookmobile trying to apply for a job. That is not the ideal situation for people that are already stressed, and relying on what has become an essential resource. I want to also thank Congressman, maybe someday, Councilperson Dobler for really kind of bringing this back as a community conversation, because I think there's some real opportunities now to get some good work done and some good planning done. All of the information from Tilsa Technologies, that the JADO board paid for is available. There's an economic impact study, there's feasibility studies, there's modeling. So, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here necessarily. There's a lot of good data and a lot of good information, and we have a good foundation now. And I think what I'm most encouraged by is I think there's a sense of urgency associated with this issue now. So, Neil, was there anything else that you wanted me to say about this?
I really appreciate that background. I wonder if you could talk just a minute about, you said maybe that task force was a little ahead of its time. And I know it got to a point, and I think it was after the study and kind of the total costs that were accumulated, that it either finished its work or for some reason didn't move forward. Do you have any thoughts on why that happened?
Well, we were actually directed not to pursue our original goal. So our original goal would have been to do all of the research, and then ultimately come up with a list of requirements for the city that identified the gaps. And ultimately, what our hope was is that we would actually be, as a community, issuing an RFP that would address gaps and disparities. And I think at that point, and part of this is the unique nature, I think, of JADO, which doesn't have its own staff and exists as a collaboration. So that the question really became, at a certain point, I'm the library CEO. I was working because I'm passionate about this and I believe in it and I'm a community member, but I really have no authority to make anything happen. And so the question then became, who owns this issue and who owns this project? And at that point, I think no one was prepared to say, I do. And what I'm hoping now is somebody's prepared to say that.
Great. Thank you so much. I think, Madam Chairwoman, if we could, let's go out of order. I think I mentioned Cox and AT&T first, but maybe it'd be good to hear from Scott. Just background on 501. How's it going? What kind of issues are you seeing at this point? Thank you.
Sure. What we're really seeing is that families are faced with three issues. There's the issue of access. Can I get some sort of broadband access where I live? Then there's the issue of density. Can I get can I get a wide enough broadband that all of the people in my household can use it in a consistent way? And then the third issue, and the one that we spend a lot of time with, is the affordability issue. Is this necessity something that I can afford to replace a different necessity like eating or rent in order to keep up with? And what we really see is that all three of those issues center around one big word, and that is consistency. Because it's not just good enough to have it now. It's not just good enough to have it when I am doing this one piece of, whether it's a job application or whether it's, I'm going to the library for this thing. If we don't use these things, then it goes back to what Dr. Mills spoke of earlier, and that is experience. If I am a student and I don't get to experience the internet, or if I am a parent and I don't get to experience the internet when I need it, I don't have the background skills necessary to be successful with it. And so consistency really plays a big part in all three of those underlying issues that we experience when we talk about broadband initiatives. As far as what the school district is currently doing, we're of course relying on our partnerships. We produced a Wi-Fi map of the area that of our footprint so that we can identify to students and to families, you know, these are areas that you can go to and have a decent connection. We're even specific, get as close as you can to the door. We're even very specific so that we can kind of help them get what they need in that short-term situation. We've also expanded our outdoor wireless offerings at a couple of our schools, and we're looking to continue those initiatives. But like Dr. Mills said about the bookmobiles, yeah, we've improved it, but it still doesn't change the underlying thing, and that is that consistency factor. It still doesn't change the underlying thing about that student having to sit out in a parking lot, or that student having to sit out outside of a restaurant. You know, those are not viable solutions. Ultimately, our students need to be able to not only do the homework that they're going to be assigned, but they need to be able to have the practice it takes to be successful in research. It's a different world for them than it was for any of us when we were in school, and we want to make sure that that world doesn't separate the haves and have-nots. And I think a broadband initiative is the right answer. As I told Dr. Mills when I did first get here, I've been on the Board of Aldermen in some of the cities that I've been associated with in the past. I've also been a technology leader in multiple school districts in my career. And I've also served in other elected capacities in my roles. And we always stumble when we do these broadband initiatives. We always stumble at the who's going to take responsibility part of it. Because even though I've represented lots of different taxpayer-supported entities, all of us, every taxpayer-supported entity that I worked with, had some vested skin in the game on making this successful, but none of them had all of the skin in the game necessary to make it successful. So it is no doubt a collaborative process, and has to be, because no one entity can afford it all. So,
Great.
those are my thoughts on that. I will say that the school district has partnered with both Cox and T-Mobile for different solutions in order to help out our students. The Cox partnership has taken a wonderful turn in that the school district has used its ability to secure some grant funds through the Sparks funds and as well as the CARES money. And we are leveraging those grant opportunities while they last to actually pay for the reduced cost service that Cox offers to its clients. Cox has also allowed us to do this in such a way as we essentially sponsor that household, and we're essentially the customer on behalf of that household. And so that allows us to kind of reach out and provide an extra layer for our free and reduced lunch students, Head Start students, other groups of students for whom affordability is the key concern. And in addition to that, I did appreciate the discussion on the homeless situation and the population that we serve in Topeka, because one of my concerns, I volunteer frequently at the mission, and one of my concerns has been those who do not have fixed or adequate housing. And so our students without fixed or adequate housing can't take advantage of a Cox opportunity, because that is based upon having a fixed or adequate house. And so we've also worked with T-Mobile to have a hotspot solution for those students for whom fixed or adequate housing is an issue. So we're trying to approach it from every angle that we can. Just want to do our best to get our students what they need. And I can probably say that we've submitted about 4,300 households that we are willing to sponsor during the duration of these grant funds, in order to make sure that at least during this time we can get them going and get them operational.
Very good. Just quick question. I appreciate your background there as well. Can you estimate what percentage of your students are able to get up in the morning and go sit at the kitchen table and have reliable broadband available for their daily activities?
We have conducted surveys to analyze that number, and we came back with a number of about 10% of our students could not. Unfortunately, the methodology left a lot to be desired. We literally were taking that survey electronically. And so those families that couldn't connect,
And
it's always gonna be
90%
like
they
that. Those families that couldn't connect couldn't participate, so they weren't represented in our sample. So I really struggle with really believing those numbers. I will tell you that we do see in multiple surveys where they respond that they do have internet access because they have a phone. And that gets back to that consistency, adequacy, density discussion. Yes, you have a phone, but that phone can only go so far. As Dr. Mills said, it is really difficult to put your best foot forward on a job application if you're doing the entire thing on a phone. Similarly, as our students were registering, it's really, really difficult for them to complete all aspects of the online registration process from a phone. Our parents did it, but they did run into some difficulty with it. And so we recognize that, us giving our students devices to be able to be used in that way is a great first step. But if those devices can't also connect, they're really still limited to their phones. And then there are families without them.
I might suggest we go ahead and hear from Cox and AT&T and then ask questions.
Absolutely.
All right.
I think we have just a letter from AT&T, but maybe
Okay.
from Cox.
All right. Megan, thanks.
We know Megan, she used to work for us.
I did, and it's great to be back with all of you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation. Megan Bottenberg with Cox Communications. I am the manager of government affairs, and it's great to see all of you again. I appreciate the opportunity. As Mr. Gowan mentioned, we have worked closely with Topeka Public Schools 501, and we were appreciative of our partnership with them. And it really set off a huge opportunity for Cox to work with school districts across the state. So what we have set in place with 501 was really the model and what we put in place in several school districts across the state, and even one county. One county came to us and said, I have 9 school districts in my county. How can I provide a low income and subsidize internet for all of my students in that county? So it really, I appreciate Mr. Gowan, and I appreciate Topeka Public Schools, and I am a 501 parent, so I understand how important internet is right now. Briefly, just wanted to explain, so Cox, we are throughout majority of Topeka, if not all of Topeka city limits proper. Shawnee County, we are also in Auburn, Silver Lake as well, and some of North Topeka area, Meriden, and some of those housing developments up there. We provide up to 1 gig service. So the lowest offering we have is 25.3. That is the minimum FCC standard, and it goes all the way up to 1 gig. And that is 1 gig for anybody, any residential customer, no matter the neighborhood, no matter where they're at, Auburn, Topeka, all of it. And so we provide that available. I believe the 1 gig service is about $100 a month. Data limits is 1 terabyte, but we have options that you can purchase up to additional unlimited data plans as well. Our low income internet offering is what we call the Connect to Compete program. That is a $10 a month. The speed is 25.3, and it is for families with students K through 12 that are in free and reduced lunches, SNAP, TANF, or in housing services. And this is something that we put in place since 2012, but as we've all mentioned, in light of the pandemic back in March, it became paramount. At that time, we offered it free for any student who was needing to enroll in the program immediately. And so that was a free service that we provided nationwide. As we mentioned, we've worked with Mr. Gowan and Topeka 501 to help with basically what we call direct billing. So we're able to bill and have them on the 501 plan. That's how we bill it. But it is still individual customer based. So that customer still has to sign up. They still have to provide us with the information. And I believe 501 has been great in helping them enroll and do what they need to in getting the students enrolled and having internet. I included in your packet today a flyer on our Connect to Compete program because we do have a new offer out for this program. It is free for 2 months. So our previous offer was free until the end of summer, mid-July or so. Now it is free for the first 2 months and then $10 a month. And that's just an aside. So most of your 501 students, we are hoping, can depend on that and provide that consistency for them. A couple other things that I wanted to mention as well. One question I often get in talking to cities is, how is your network? We have more and more people working online from home, schooling from home. How many Zoom calls do we have going on in one home? I know somebody had 8 Zoom calls in one home. And often we get asked, how's your network? How is it performing? I can assure you and tell you the network is performing exceptionally well, especially in the Topeka area. And that is in thanks to our hardworking Topeka employees who live right here and work on the network every day. We have, and really it's also thanks to the billions of dollars that we've invested over the past few years and have plans to invest even more to increase the speeds. Invariably, we do have issues. We handle them as they come. We handle them immediately to ensure that you aren't interrupted with your Zoom meeting or a child's not interrupted with their Zoom classroom. But we do not have any congested nodes here in Topeka. Completely unrelated to the pandemic, we were starting to already upgrade our network yet again. So that will continue over the next few years. Final thing to mention, and Gina and I have worked together on that task force that she put together, and I appreciate her leadership on that. We obviously know there are some areas in Shawnee County that do not have reliable high-speed internet. We closely monitor those areas to see how does it look, how can we assist. There are 2 areas north of Topeka, and I appreciate working with the Shawnee County Commission as well as your city manager, Mr. Trout, on this. We applied for SPARK grants, the Connectivity Emergency Response Grant through the Department of Commerce. We are waiting to hear back. And it would serve, and we would be able to serve with high-speed internet. I believe it's roughly 300 homes that are currently unserved. They are mainly in the Seaman School District, so we believe this would be very advantageous to both the Seaman School District, but also we know the parents obviously work in Topeka and probably working for employers here in Topeka. And so we believe this is really advantageous for the entire community as a whole. Like I said, we are waiting to hear back on those grant applications, and if we are able to receive those grant dollars, we look forward to serving all of those customers in those 2 neighborhoods. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
I'll float one, and I never really understood it, so I'm sort of where we left off when that task force was cut off. It seemed that there were people who knew a whole lot more about broadband than I did, so I was just sort of listening, and it appeared that where the money was to help, or that there was an awful lot of focus in developing broadband access in rural areas and not as much inside cities, to make sure, at the time, to make sure that everybody inside a city had access. Can you, just for perspective, confirm or correct that?
For everyone visiting.
And then talk about whether, what's that been, 5 years maybe since that study sort of plateaued? Has that changed? Because the sense that I had was people just couldn't figure out maybe that it was even worth it to identify where we needed assistance in Topeka because it didn't look like there was anything there to help.
So I would say in Topeka, and it's an excellent question and a question that is worthwhile to ask because I think we have to really dive deep into these issues. I would say the city of Topeka is very well served. The city of Topeka proper. You have Cox, you have AT&T. It goes back to the concerns that Mr. Gowan had. Is it affordable? Do they enroll? Do they sign up for service? I think that's part of it too. It's an adoption issue. It's not an accessibility issue, but it's an adoption issue, especially for those here in Topeka. But we provided those maps to the task force as well as to where exactly we are at. Now, when you look at Shawnee County, there are definitely some areas that are unserved. And we discussed that with the task force. It comes down to a cost issue. Cox Communications is a private company, a privately held company. So anything that we do to expand our services comes out of our own private dollars. We have to go to a bank just like everybody else and ask for a loan, and hopefully, the number of customers that can sign up with our service, that helps make a business. It has to make financial sense. A lot of homes in the Shawnee County area are on 5-acre lots, and it costs not hundreds, but tens of thousands of dollars to build out to them, to every single home. And so the initial study that the task force completed was great in that it really looked at the issue, but it proposed a municipal or a county totally public plan in terms of a public network. And from Cox's perspective, that really doesn't do you service, because here you are spending additional taxpayer dollars when a private company, 2 private companies, 3, 4, you have many competitors here in the area, are already providing that same service with private dollars. Some may get a grant to do that, to expand. And so what we argued is that it really should be a public-private partnership. It should be all the providers working together and expanding that network. It doesn't need to be a public-owned network, but really expand it using public and private dollars together. We've been really pleased with how the state has taken this in the Sparks Grant Task Force over the past 2 months, because it's really established exactly what we've been looking for and what we would recommend to you all. It sets up public dollars, but private entities, we had to put up 20%. That is our commitment in this grant application. 20% of that project cost is on us. And so we're willing to do that. We are very much interested and passionate about this as much as anybody else. We live here and work here too. We want everybody to be successful. And so that would be my recommendation is moving forward. If we are to do something, we would greatly appreciate a public-private partnership. We have this great opportunity with the CARES Act dollars to set that up. We are hoping we can serve 300 new homes here in Topeka and Shawnee County area. That would help if we were to get that state grant, and we look forward to more opportunities like that.
How many more homes did you say?
It'd be about 300
If
homes.
I may, Megan, I do want to correct something. The task force never recommended a publicly owned utility. And as a matter of fact, we never reached a point where we were even showing options, but we always talked about a public-private partnership. And so I want to be really clear about that. That is an option some communities consider. And just because we wanted to have a comprehensive approach, we looked at all the models, but that was not the one that was floating to the top.
I apologize. I stand corrected then, Gina.
Yeah, I just want to be clear about that, because the thing is, most cities and local government don't want. I was an IT director early in my career. I ran systems. Trust me, you know, we don't want to be in the business of internet provision, but we do want to be in the business of planning for broadband, right? And for, again, identifying those areas where there is disparity. Because you're right, gigabit services are available. There's an affordability issue, and there's a geography issue as well. So, for instance, where I live in Shawnee County, I live 5 miles outside of Auburn. You cannot make a business case to bring fiber to me, can you? Absolutely understand that. But Does that mean I don't need it? No, it doesn't. And so I pay $80 a month for what is never 5 megabits down and 1 up, right? I do that because I have to have it for work. I absolutely, I've been working from home. And so it's those kinds of issues that I think local government has a responsibility to understand and say, okay, if there's no business case for a provider to just come in and do it, then how can we work together to make sure all citizens have access? So I just wanted to be really clear about that it was never about being the Lone Ranger.
I stand corrected.
Got a question.
Go right ahead.
So I think it's called Connect to Compete program. Is that the 25-3?
That is correct.
What does that mean in layman's terms? If I've got 2 kids trying to do video at the same time, does it support that?
Sure, it can. My understanding, and maybe Mr. Gowan knows differently and can say differently, but I would say my understanding is, yes, it can do the Zoom calls. It's 25 download, 3 upload, but you may be 2 students on that at a time, but Mr. Gowan probably would know better as the tech expert.
I can tell you that the 25 megabytes per second download, that's approximately 5 times what, let's say, Netflix recommends for their broadcast. For a Zoom quality where you have both upload and download going on, that 3 megabytes per second upload is a little more problematic if you have more than 2 kids. What we've recommended to our families that have more than 2 kids connecting to Zoom at the same time is to work out with their teachers an opportunity to rotate among the students that are going to be connecting as to who needs to be on video at any given moment within the household. And then the other thing that we've recommended to them is that they use what's called the speaker view mode. So that instead of me being a student and seeing the images of all of my peers, I'm seeing the image of the person who's speaking. And so that allows to kind of trim up a little bit the bandwidth footprint that we're going to be using in my household for Zoom.
Great. Thank you. Just one more question.
Please.
So as far as access, you have access to every household in Topeka has access to Cox or AT&T or both? Okay, good.
And I'd be happy, I believe I can provide a map to the city manager.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic, thanks. That's all I have right now.
So, again, you wanted this on, and I feel like I'm in catch-up mode. So what do we need to do? I mean, if you already had, if Gina says that when they left off, they felt like we needed a comprehensive plan, we needed to identify the gaps and the needs and then come up with a plan to fill them. You're saying that today you have a map anyway that shows where all the service is. You've played with a process that's been somewhat successful, though maybe you need to manage it in terms of only one person on at a time. Which when you get students or people working from home, that you're right. Your example was up to 8, but okay, what do we need? Are we there? We just need to deploy money, or what do we need to do?
I mean, I guess what I've heard in these conversations is, first of all, we have access to every house in Topeka by one of the 2 providers or both. We have opportunity for probably adequate internet for students, either free or at $10 a month. On the other hand, I'm hearing, students showing up at bookmobiles to do their homework, at the library, at other places outlined a little bit earlier by Mr. Gowan. So we've got a gap there. How do we get the folks that are having to utilize the library or bookmobiles to get at least the $10 a month internet access?
I can speak to that if you'd like me to.
Sure.
Number one, I will say that the Cox partnership with 501 is very new. And so we're still in a transition stage where some of those families some of the 4,300 families that we are connecting are not connected yet. In fact, I would venture to say all of the 4,300 are either current Cox customers or they're not connected yet. So we are working towards that piece of it. The other piece of it is that some of these families have outstanding balances. Some of these families have other barriers that have, up until this point, prevented them from being able to take advantage of a Cox offer or an AT&T offer. Prior to COVID, families shared stories with us that they weren't able to connect up because they weren't able to document their citizenship and things like that. But I know Cox definitely eliminated that barrier when we were dealing with them early on in the COVID process. So we didn't experience that after that point. So there are lingering issues in the same way we talked about water bills earlier, which is very familiar to me. In the same way we talked about water bills earlier, where people get behind and it takes a while for them to be able to get back caught up and connected again. Some of our families are experiencing that on the internet side of things. And so we're hoping to, we've been working with a couple of community organizations to try to find donations and things like that to be able to help our families get current. And some of that is working very positively. But again, we aren't able to reach everybody with the funds that we have yet. We're getting there though.
Thank you.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. Scott, when I have a couple people that are having issues, and it's ironic that Neil brought this up, I was pretty glad to hear this and see this. So do we contact you or do we contact Cox when we have these issues of trying to sign up?
Trying to sign up for the district partnership service?
Right.
Contact us, because that process begins with us. We need to first make sure that the family is qualified for that service first of all, and then we work with Cox on our end in order to get that arranged.
Okay, so can you provide me with the number or the team with the number of who we contact or email or something?
Yes.
Because I've gotten like 2 calls and I want to be able to direct them. You know, when we see these flyers, and I know the city manager has sent us stuff too, that, you know, I look on this flyer, not to take away from you, but it says, you know, have a K through 12 students. So people think I'm automatically enrolled, you know, I'm automatically eligible, or, you know, live in public housing. But then some people are like, well, are a new customer. And I had one person tell me that they have cable and their cable was $150. So if they could pay that, they don't need free internet. It's like, but yet we're struggling with this, and they do pay that, but they don't have internet. So these are the things, and I just want to make sure that I want to go back and work with our neighbor relations to get the low to moderate income. That's prominently my constituents, so that I know, well, yeah, but this is happening, or you can do this, you know, to get it out there. It was very sad. My grandson goes to Chase, and it was very sad. Miss Norman did a welcome back to school Zoom meeting, and there was some parents on there that were on their phone. They were literally on their phone asking questions and trying to figure all this out and trying to figure out how they were going to help their child, you know, because they didn't have the internet, and, you know, what would they do? And it was right scary, you know, when you have this couple of days before school starts, you know, to see that, and then I seen all the kids that were on, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? I need to be educated a little bit, you know, because they were just like, you know, talking about what's your ID number on this game and that game, and look me up or play you later, you know, and then, you know, the principal was asking the vice principal to keep up with the chat room, and he's trying his best, and I'm trying to read, and it's kind of neat to see that. And one thing that I do admire that Principal Norman did was she dedicated 2 people to, if you had any issues, to call those to school with those 2 people on any issues that they had. And then they figured out where the issue lied at. So it was kind of neat, but we still have parents that can't afford it, that are struggling, that, you know, you do see kids outside of Chase, or you do see kids outside of the schools or wherever. So I appreciate, even Gina, all your hard work in this. Maybe we all need 2 pair of glasses so we can really see what's going on here, you know. But I just want to know, who do we contact? Because I know some people have contacted Cox and they've given up because they're fed up, you know,
For this new initiative that's being coordinated, you know, where we are essentially the customer on behalf of the customer.
Okay.
They contact through the school, they contact our office, and then we go through and confirm everything for them, and then we reach out to Cox on their behalf.
Okay. So if you can give me that person's name and phone number and email address.
It's going to vary by school, but you're always welcome to call our office. Our office is 438-4750, but it is generally handled at the school level because they have the relationship with the family. And the first step is the applying for the free and reduced lunch benefits. And that's basically the first step on my end, is I go in and I confirm whether or not that has taken place. And usually the school can double check that and make sure that they have everything that they need right there. So,
Okay.
yeah, you're always welcome. You can refer them to our office. We'll find
Just
a way to
give me your cell number. I'll have them call you.
Yeah,
Can you identify what your office is, so
Yeah.
if they forget the phone number, they know
this
who
is
to
the
ask
Information
for?
Technology Office.
Information Technology Office.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
And we will make sure that we find them and get them into the program that works for them. Because I agree with you. I understand that for the short term that may be necessary for them to be out there, but I don't want to see students out there, you know, when things start to turn a little colder and things like that. I don't want to see students out there needing to connect up outside of a school or outside of another building, or, you know, anywhere they can find a Wi-Fi bleed. I want to see them being able to do that at home. I want them to be able to catch up with their peers. I want them to be able to explore, research, do all of those things that many of us take for granted. I want them to have those access.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
I think I'd like to try to reduce this down to 2 or 3 proposals to move forward. The first is, how does the city assist with resources to help folks get connected with either 501 or Cox or whoever it is to take advantage of the low-cost internet? And I don't know if that's, Corey, if that's something you can help with. I don't know where that goes, but I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, you know, leadership's a little different now on both the city and county side than it was a couple of years ago. I think we should get with the county and the Greater Topeka Partnership and see if we can restart the initiative. You know, it's great to work within the city limits, and that's our charge, but I think really the bigger issue is, how does the community come together to provide not just Gina, but other folks that are struggling? And as somebody pointed out, you know, almost everybody in the county around here probably works in Topeka someplace,
Right,
so it
right.
really does benefit all of us. I would suggest perhaps the next meeting we ask representation from the Greater Topeka Partnership and perhaps the county commission to show up, and let's have a discussion of how we can move forward, whether that becomes a Go Topeka initiative, a city-county initiative, something. It's all the same folks. So let's see if we can get that restarted. And then I think the final thing, and you know, if you look at some of the cities where some of the communities where the city has taken the initiative, the bottom line is the city owns the right of way, and that's where all the utilities end up. I mean, they have some private easements, but most of it's in the city-owned right of way. If there's a way that that the city can assist in again, a public-private partnership to make it easier to build that infrastructure. Even though it sounds like we're almost there, but I know the AT&T representative mentioned that they still have issues, structural issues with the infrastructure. If there's a way to make that easier to get service to people, and the city can be a part of that, obviously we'd want to figure out how to cover everybody's costs, but I think we could do that. Let's talk about that a little bit. So I think that would be probably more of a city manager initiative with the public works folks and the IT folks and whatever to visit with both Cox and AT&T and see what we can do to help make that part of it easier. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Neil. What I would like to request is the maps from Cox. I would also, at our next meeting, so we can be able to look at that, I would like also to a clear understanding, I don't know if this would come from Scott, or of the process, so we know the process. There's a breakdown in the process. I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying, because I've heard people say the 501 sent out the link and they filled it out and that's as far as it got. So I don't know where the breakdown is, so I would just like to make sure that we understand the process. Also, Gina, if you have any documentation or if you guys took notes from your meetings, if we could have that.
There's a report.
There's a report?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, to kind of get caught up to speed. I know Neil likes to read a lot, so we can give it, no. I mean, just some things that are highlighted out of that, and anything that AT&T can bring to the table so that we don't miss anything, you know. And I think the city does a good job when we're on it of notifying the NIAs to ask them to help us. But just to receive a flyer that, and it has a lot of good stuff in here, but we have a lot of people that can't read, or we have a lot of people that they can't get onto this, so they're automatically going to Cox, so they're being misdirected. So if we can get that clear understanding, I think we could get the word out pretty strong. And then I think you've hit it all from your angle, you know, as well. And anything else that, Gina, you might feel that we're missing from your report, because you probably know it better than I do. This is exciting. It's really exciting to me because we have so many kids at home. And, you know, when you have 2 or 3 kids, that's great that we have the Chromebooks, but we also have to give them the other tool to survive as well. And I know like some of the 3rd graders and on down, they're struggling because they don't work with that in classes. So it's new to them as well. But if we can get that done, that would be great.
I too have a couple of lingering issues. What I remember, I think Scott, maybe you gave us a couple of 1, 2, 3 lists, because the one I checked wasn't the one I was looking for. But we've been talking about the access to broadband and the cost, but there was also the technology, and there was also the training of learning how to use that equipment and the systems. And I think of a couple of examples. I mean, we talked about the seniors earlier. We've been talking about kids mostly, again, which is fine. But back to thinking about kids, are they getting issued anything bigger than an iPad right now? I mean,
so our pre-K through 1st grade students use an iPad, and our 2nd grade students through senior year, they use Chromebooks.
Yeah, they got
and a Chromebook is
yeah.
this
a little
big?
bit larger. I think we use it's either 13-inch or a 14-inch Chromebook, but it's a little bit larger than the iPad, a little bit more along the lines of like a laptop screen.
Well, what I'm thinking about, and I guess I'm old school enough, I print stuff when I need to edit it and keep it, but are those older kids getting access to a keyboard ever?
All the Chromebooks have a keyboard, and all the iPads are issued with, I believe they have a keyboard built into the case.
reasonable size? So that you don't
Yeah,
have to-
reasonable size. The Chromebook keyboards are very comparable to our laptop keyboards.
Okay. I just remember, we've been talking about little kids too, but I was working with high school seniors in terms of applications for opportunities for internships and fellowships and college applications, and they were missing out because they couldn't do them on their phones and didn't have enough time. And so I look at not only getting our kids through school, but moving them forward, and whether they've got the hardware that they need, printers as well. I mean, they were just stuck, and I was just trying to get a couple of kids connected, and it was so clear how that not having it at home, having to go to get into the school to be able to have both the hardware and a printer and the broadband. So you think the tech is good enough? The range of tech is good enough for our kids. I think we need to think about whether it is good enough for everybody else as we look at services for our families, our adults that are needing to work or do job apps from home. I know when the library was closed, people were just lost because you've got what, still 177, 175 workstations, Gina?
Actually, right now, because of distancing, we don't have that many available, but we have enough to be sure that everyone who needs access to a computer and broadband has it.
And you also still do classes?
Right now, we're not doing in-house classes. We have been offering one-on-one support, and we have been doing some via Zoom. But again, you have to have a certain level of facility with the technology, and you have to, if you're not coming to the library, you have to have access to a device to do that. So it's a catch-22.
Thank you. I just think that needs to be part of the package of what we're looking into, is that the knowledge about how to use that technology as well as the hardware access.
But Karen, we definitely, I mean, we've actually been doing, internet and technology classes for the past 20 years.
I know.
And interestingly enough, the need does not decrease over time. We're still doing taming the mouse for people that literally need an introduction to a computer. Here's the power button. Here, this is a mouse. This is what it does. All the way to students that are doing, as Scott said, very high-level, sophisticated types of research.
Thank you.
There you go, Karen. You can take a class.
Well, I think I need a couple because it keeps advancing, but I can do some basic stuff. I just, I think it was Scott who said it earlier, but you can have that broadband, but if you can't use it.
I thought that was really interesting, just that familiarity with using a computer day in, day out. Made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think, I appreciate everybody showing up and talking about this. 100 years ago, we were, the issue was how to get water to everybody, electricity, gas, and clearly broadband is the utility that we need to make accessible to everybody. So great start, and I think it's a bigger picture than I had originally thought. It's not so much about infrastructure, maybe a little bit about infrastructure, but I think it's about really the three things that Scott mentioned. I think we can do some good here. So I would ask Gina if you're able to come in a month when we talk with the county and the Greater Topeka Partnership. I think that'd be great, just because you have the background.
Scott, too.
Yeah.
And the GTP did receive some grant money, I believe, from the U.S. Chamber to actually begin a broadband awareness campaign. And so that article that appeared in the paper that a number of us were interviewed for, that came at the instigation of Michelle Cuevas Stubblefield and the GTP. Okay. So there are, there's a number of initiatives there. I think we're getting some convergence now. The Kansas Department of Commerce has received, I think, about $60 million. I sat in on a workshop recently. Scott, you were probably on it as well. I mean, there were hundreds of people sitting in on that, providers as well, because a very high percentage of those grants will most likely go to providers because they're the ones with the shovel-ready projects. Right. And the turnaround, it's such a tight turnaround because those monies have to be committed, and encumbered, and sometimes even expended, by the end of the year. Yes. So it's crazy. It's really crazy.
So
And
with that,
somebody-
are there others you think we should be inviting to the table?
AT&T.
I think actually just regular residents. I've been talking to parents, I spoke recently with, actually, it was Topeka School District's Parents Advisory Group, and some of the board members attend that as well. But I really do think that school board members are certainly advocates for this. And then I think there needs to be a grassroots user component. That's what we missed last time, because they can speak to their needs more eloquently than any of us can.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like we've set a big fat agenda item for our next meeting
Great.
on this. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk briefly about our code compliance issues and wrap up here ourselves. You're welcome to stay with us or head on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you, Neil.
Thank
You
you.
opened it way up.
This might be fun.
Yeah. Let's just talk perhaps just briefly about where people are thinking we are about doing code compliance input. To wrap that project up.
Seems like old news to me.
It is old news.
I know you wanted to meet with constituents, and I'm not real comfortable with meeting with them right now. With them, have some maybe meetings. I mean, I still think people are kind of shaky about coming out, talking, or kind of gathering. So I don't know about that. I did want to ask Mike a few questions. I need to get him up and running, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Mike, what can we do about our ditches to get people to realize that that is their responsibility?
We send them notice. The issue we have is the manpower and the staffing. We've done over 2,000 cases on weeds this year. We're running almost 200 cases behind with the mow crew. And that's just a reality with COVID, with the fact they took one of the inmate crews away from us, and they can't keep up. So what we do is we send notice. The inspectors are daily running right at the amount they can do. We got them all pushing out a product to where they are busy from the minute they walk in, they walk out. When it comes to the ditches, that's a hard one. We see them too, and we cite them, and it's also a tough one when people physically can't mow them. So I don't have an easy answer of how to get people to do the ditches.
You're supposed to have an easy answer, Mike.
I know.
I just say that I just want to make sure that we're making that really clear, that that is their responsibility.
Sure.
Because I know where I live, we've got some that are just terribly high, and it's almost a safety issue. It's beginning to be.
Yeah, so you actually sent me a property that we went and mowed.
Yeah.
Or we didn't mow it. We sent notice.
Right.
And they mowed it, but they didn't mow the ditches. In our letter, we clearly state you
Okay.
need to mow the entire property, including the easements, the alleys, the ditches, because what we discovered when I first started was they just mowed the front yard, and we were closing cases, and that wasn't acceptable.
Right.
So then we started saying, hey, you need to mow the front and back, and you need to mow the easement, and then we discovered they weren't mowing the alleys and stuff. So we get it all, and it took a couple years where people were arguing, saying, hey, man, I've been mowing my front for the last 10 years, and code enforcement was totally cool with me just mowing my front.
Right.
Now you're billing me and you're mowing my back. Nobody's crying or complaining that we didn't forewarn them anymore.
Okay.
They know the system, and they know that they got to mow the ditches. So like the one that you had, they didn't do the job. So we're going to come and we're going to mow it if they don't get it done. But we called them and told them it wasn't good enough. You better show up and mow it.
Okay, thank you. I just know there was a little back and forth there, with residents thought it was their responsibility. Then we told them so I just want to make sure we're making it clear. And as long as we're making it clear, that's when they get billed and they call me, I'll let them know that.
It's super clear. We say every piece of the
Super
property.
duper clear,
Yes.
okay, okay.
In using that example, are you citing them and fining them even if you don't get it mowed? I mean, we don't have to mow it. We just do.
Okay,
So
so
if we don't mow it, let's just say,
Look.
would you still ticket them?
yeah, not ticket, but yes. So we cite. We'll just use
Cite them.
simple days. On the first day, we cite them. On the 10th day, we show up. If it is not mowed, we then notify the crew. There's a $106.65 bill that's attached to that right then. Then the crew shows up anywhere from the next day to 20 days because of where they are on the backlog. If they find the property's mowed, it's $106.65. If they find the property isn't mowed, then we mow it and it goes up to $400, $265 to $400.
And at this point, are we mowing all of them before they ever get billed?
Are we mowing all of them before they get billed?
Correct.
I'm not understanding the question.
Let's say we didn't mow it, what would happen?
Well, we will ultimately mow it before Christmas. I mean, we're going to mow until they're all mowed that we've cited. So if they don't mow it, we're going to mow it. Does that answer your question?
I guess so. I guess, part of the challenge that I see us looking at is along the lines of what Councilwoman Ortiz was bringing up is how do we make sure, in a perfect world, you don't ever have to go out. Everybody knows that you're supposed to mow your front and your backyard, and it includes what's behind your fence on the alley, and it includes your ditch in the front. You go curb to curb. And somehow over the years, as you just described, that has fallen off. So people aren't even sure what they have to do. And most of us are kind of wired to do it whatever the least is, especially if we're having a bad day. And so the issue of whether if we didn't mow it at all, but we just find people, whether that might be enough to start shaping it up too, is where I was going with that, actually. But if that never happens,
I would say it wouldn't happen because they automatically on that 10th day get a minimum of $106.65.
because I think we have continued to hear too people who go, that's a pretty good deal compared to me. If they think mowing it once a year is good enough, fine. At least I don't have to mow it 5 times, and it was only even $400. I've heard, so somehow, and this is not your fault. It's how can we as a community flip this thing so that people are mowing it themselves, and you never even have to write them up, much less figure out how to get a crew out there.
Well, Karen, this instance, this person does not mow this property. Every year, last year I gave them a courtesy call and said, this property needs to be cut. And they said, oh, I gave that to the church. And so this year I said, to our staff, I reported it again because I'm getting phone calls from the neighbors. And I asked whose name it was in. It's in this person's name that year after year after year, if it doesn't get reported, it doesn't get cut.
Right.
And so that's the kind of the issue. And then the other issue is they cut it, but I'll send you pictures of the ditches, and I just want to make sure we're making it clear, and it sounds like we are, that they are also responsible for that, because I have that conversation with a lot of people that's your responsibility. No, it's your responsibility.
Right.
And so when they come back and say, I've cut that and you still find me, I want to be able to say, because you did not cut your ditch, which is huge.
And may I, that's exactly what happens. They go, I cut it. And I go, no, we have pictures showing you didn't cut the entire back area. And they don't have an argument. They go, I understand. What I would assume on the one that guy didn't even go out to the property. He hired the cheapest contractor he could find. That guy, and he said, go mow the property. He didn't give a proper description of what you needed to mow. The guy went and he mowed the lot and he left the ditches. And
a huge pile of limbs that have been there for over 2 years.
Well, and I got called to go out
So
where they're redoing the streets, where Topeka State used to mow all the way to the to the streets, and now 501 doesn't, and there are full-size trees, and it's a mess. And do people have other ones? Otherwise, we need to talk about how we do want to wrap this up.
No, I just
We can tell
wanted to
stories
make sure that
yep,
was, yeah.
Yep.
I just got a quick question for the city manager.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And this might be a little bit rhetorical, I doubt if you can answer it, but, so what's the function of a ditch in front of a residential property?
Usually drainage,
Okay, what's the function of a curb and gutter or storm sewer system?
drainage.
If I have a curb and gutter and storm sewer system in front of my house, am I responsible for maintenance of that?
The curb and gutter, no. That is the city, we maintain that.
So why do I have to maintain the ditch?
The understanding is that you mow or any grass that is there from the street over to into the house, its normal property, is that your responsibility to maintain.
And most of the parts of town that don't have curb and gutter are East Topeka, North Topeka,
Central Topeka.
Central Topeka.
Yeah, so basically the older parts of town, because our current code typically requires curb and gutter to be installed at the time of construction of streets.
Okay, thanks.
But we've been flip-flopping, Neil. We said the city's responsible, no, the people are responsible, and we flip-flop so much, I think we've got to stay on tack, and these people have got to know what they're supposed to do.
I get that. It just,
Yeah.
it seems to be a little bit of an inequity there, that
Yeah.
if I can afford to live in the part of town that has curb and gutter, the city takes care of the drainage system.
Most people don't want to have to do their sidewalks either, so
Yeah, and I
you
think
have to draw the lines.
the one thing we do to help with that is that if your drainage, say in your driveway, if that pipe is collapsed or whatever, we will install. If you buy the pipe, then we will install it. And that's one thing that helps a little bit with that. I wouldn't say it totally compensates for it, but if there is an issue with the pipe that runs underneath your driveway, we will replace it. You buy the pipe and we put it in. So that way we know it's installed with some right flow, et cetera. We have at least some assurance that we've installed it in a proper way.
Well, and this is not exactly code compliance, but where there's storm sewer, buried storm sewer, though the city comes around periodically to clean out those inlets, there's a sort of an innate responsibility on the part of the people that live there to not put their leaves in the gutter and
Hope so.
and to clean out those intake grates if they get clogged and so on too.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that you're referring to, Councilman, is that as we do some new street construction, that in locations where we can, we pull monies beyond sales tax to match with the sales tax money to where we can add curb and gutter, because we know typically it ends up with a better product in the end for the neighborhood. So
Yeah, that could be a follow-on cynical question. Do the folks with a ditch pay stormwater utility fees?
oh yeah,
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah,
yeah. You're right. Those are issues from old to new, beginning of development of the community to current development.
right. Just needs to be something we continue to work on,
Yeah,
chip
I agree.
away at.
One
What's
thing.
interesting is that ditches are now the trend. You know, this was starting, that we're asking anybody who puts in a big commercial property to put a swale in and have it naturally run into a ditch instead of having to pay for the city having to pay for and maintain a bigger storm sewer system. And so we've actually gone back to that being in many ways, the premier green solution to stormwater runoff, which I find those things happen.
One thing I will say too, I've been talking to Mike, and it looks like we're only going to have one abatement crew as we go into next year. We are going to, I think, based on the fact that this year we're running 200 behind. We got up a little bit when we had a dry spell there, but we've fallen behind again. As a matter of fact, we're going to be mowing unless it's been mowed today, we're going out to mow the outlots along West Ridge Mall because they've never done it. That's a 3-day process for our crews to get all of that mowed. And so it's a huge issue, but we've made every effort possible, Mike has, to get the owners of that outlet. It's a different owner of the mall that owns the outlet lots. And so, but that's going to be a huge process. And so really we're looking at the possibility that we may need to look at private contractors in order to be able to keep up with this, which if we do, we will need to change our fee structure, because what we get as a expense from the mowing crews, from the inmate crews, is a lot less than what we will get out of a private contractor. And so those fines may have to go up if we have to go that route. We'll see where we end this year, and we'll be evaluating that over the next
Well, we
as
used to
we
use
enter
private
the-
contractors all the time, and the state law says you can, for the abatement, you can only pass on actual dollars. But, and it troubled me a little bit. Hopefully the rates that we had were covering what we were paying for the crews and the vehicles and all
Yes.
that kind of stuff. Because we asked about that early in this process, and it was just kind of a checked around rate, but we'd be able to pass that on.
Yeah.
I guess for us as a committee, looping back to, recommendations and results from this process, we had talked about doing public hearings, and now we're into September. Do we still want to do that, or should we shift gears? Is there a reason to do a survey, or should we simply go back to the information and the issues that we have covered and look at making some recommendations, and either using those recommendations for public feedback or just discussing them amongst ourselves and then taking them back to the governing body? Because for me, the issue of this, we keep talking about anecdotes of so on, is what's our public policy going to be? Is our goal to have people take care of it themselves? And if so, let's talk about strategies to get there versus the situation that we're in right now. And so I want us to kind of start to pull this together towards some recommendations and solutions in partnership with you and Mike and so on.
I have two suggestions that I've thought of which relates to that. One, we have the Citizens Advisory Council that, is comprised of the NIAs. So potentially maybe getting on their agenda and seeking their input based on the items that you have. And they have some meetings coming up still through this year, getting on there. And then the other one is the NAs are not part of that, but we have a number of other neighborhood associations, and looking at reaching out to the neighborhood associations and getting their input. So that would be two groups potentially that you could get a little bit of public input from, and see, and even maybe with the NA one, do a little bit of publicity for just general public, anyone that would want to join the NA one, because they wouldn't normally be at the NIA CAC meeting. But looking at that as two potential options to get a little bit of public input before you would go into making your decisions.
What's our capacity? What's our maximum capacity on a Zoom?
Well over 100. It's
over 100. So we could. The Neighborhood Relations has a list of all those. So we've in effect got an email blast list for both groups that you're talking about.
And it may not get to what you were initially hoping for, but it would at least give you one or two opportunities to do a little bit of outreach to the community.
Well, if we did one daytime and one evening and offered it by Zoom.
And then get on the CAC agenda, and you'd have it pretty well covered. And we can work with you to develop the agenda and get things set up for the meeting.
Okay. Do you think we're at a point where, especially if we targeted at those groups and then maybe the Landlord Association as well, and
you could have them
invited anybody else who was interested, did a little publicity that again, part of it was getting people together, but part of it was your thoughts about whether people were just oriented toward doing that kind of thing right now. You think by October that we could, particularly if it was targeted at that group, we could get some input?
If there's any input to be had, I mean, I think we've covered a lot. I think it's been good. I think, Mike, you've done a good job of explaining, the process. It hasn't been overwhelming with responses, so I think it's been good just to kind of review it. I don't know what changes or what you're looking at, but.
Well, should we shift then with that? I mean, I played with it a little bit in terms of how we could put out some questions, and none of that seemed to ignite anything with you guys, so maybe they weren't good. Would we be better off to spend some time looking at what we learned and seeing if instead to have some proposals to put forward to get feedback on rather than just generic input?
Yeah, I think that would probably
you
be
think?
great at this point, yeah.
Well, then let me work on that and work maybe with city manager and Mike to get something together and plan that we would review those at our October meeting, not set anything yet, and see if we can, I want us to be prepared and have everybody feel like it's quality time.
How about
So-
the top three?
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that.
So will we come back with the broadband as well?
It looks like it, and so
Okay.
that's going to be a pretty full meeting in October. I think as far as CAC, I think the affordable housing stuff's going to be on their agenda in October, so that November might be a better time to bring our stuff back anyway. We'll see.
Because I think we need to
November
push-
23rd sounds like a great day.
I think we need to continue the broadband to,
Absolutely.
yeah.
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 Okay.
Well, let me see if I can work those results into some proposals rather than just input,
Okay.
so that we can
Good.
move them towards some closure while we're still on the committee.
Maybe send them out, before the
Absolutely.
meeting. Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right, good meeting. Thank you for
Thanks.
bringing that forward. Thank you all. We're adjourned.
All right.
What?
I'll need your help.
You'll need my help?
Yes.
I was just sitting here thinking, what did I do with the rest of my notes? My notes are everywhere. You guys figure out that